Available? I think it's on a weekend, right? Like a Saturday or Sunday?
You'd be much better.
We'll
much
co-host.
better. I'll watch you.
We'll co-host, but I won't wait for them to call, either one of us.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Laura.
Have a great show.
Thanks. All right, we begin with the Fox News alert. The White House responding tonight to a new report that the inaugural committee is under a federal investigation. Trace is on the case for us tonight. And was it entrapment, sending the FBI to interview former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, advising him he didn't need a lawyer? And Jim Comey speaking publicly now about getting away with it. Plus, a federal judge drops the hammer on the Mueller team, asking them to turn over everything related to Flynn and raising new questions about what the FBI could be hiding. And the latest threat to the border wall, Congress ditching Washington for nearly a week, coming back with just a couple of days before the deadline to actually fund the government, keep it open. The president says he'll do whatever it takes to get border security. So who blinks first? Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Tonight, a judge ordering the Mueller team to cough up scores of documents related to Michael Flynn. And there are stunning new questions tonight about exactly how the FBI went after him. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge fills us in.
Filed late Wednesday night, the order from federal judge Emmett Sullivan gives special counsel Robert Mueller's team less than 48 hours to provide all records and underlying notes from the FBI's January 2017 interview of former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn in the White House Situation Room. In court papers this week, Flynn's attorneys claimed then FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, later fired for lying to federal investigators over media leaks, called Flynn at short notice, then sent two agents, including Peter Strzok, who sent anti-Trump texts to conduct Flynn's Russia interview. The filing also claims McCabe discouraged Flynn from having a lawyer present, and the agents did not warn Flynn that any false statements could be prosecuted. By contrast, Flynn's legal team said other witnesses were warned of the probe's serious nature. Over the weekend, Comey said he was directly involved because he believed Flynn's statements about his Russia contacts to the vice president conflicted with FBI evidence.
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration.
Adding to the mystery, last year Comey and McCabe told Republican House investigators that the FBI agents reported no signs of deception from the Flynn interview. Despite the guilty plea, the president, who rarely comments about Flynn, told Fox he believes his former aide was pressured.
They convinced him he did lie, and he made some kind of a deal. And now they're recommending no time. You know why? Because they're embarrassed that they got caught.
Judge Sullivan has a track record for calling out prosecutorial misconduct. His order puts the special counsel and Flynn's legal team on a tight timeline. The sentencing is scheduled for Tuesday. Shannon.
All right, Catherine Herridge, thank you very much. Well, the White House responding tonight to claims that the committee that put together the inauguration's under investigation for how donations were made and then how the money was spent. Trace Gallagher on the case for us tonight. Good evening, Trace.
Good evening, Shannon. It's not a coincidence the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan is investigating the Trump inaugural committee. Those are the same U.S. attorneys who prosecuted former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. In fact, it appears information from the raids on Cohen's home and office back in April may have prompted this. Our corporate cousin, the Wall Street Journal, says during a recorded conversation between Cohen and Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, a former advisor to the First Lady, Wolkoff expressed concern about how inauguration money was being spent. The Trump inaugural committee raised an astonishing $106+ million. That's double the previous record by Barack Obama's inaugural committee back in 2009. The question now is, what happened to the $106 million? According to tax documents, about $60 million went to vendors, though it's unclear what they spent it on. Another $4.6 million went to salaries, and $5 million was given out in the form of grants. But that still leaves tens of millions unaccounted for. The inaugural committee says it was in full compliance. Quoting here, finances were fully audited internally and independently and are fully accounted. Moreover, the inauguration's accounting was provided both to the Federal Election Commission and the IRS in compliance with all laws and regulations. The investigation will reportedly also look at whether any donations came from people looking to gain influence or access to the new administration, which of course is illegal. We should note that big-name donors like billionaire Sheldon Adelson, Boeing Corporation, and AT&T are not under investigation. And tonight, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders told Martha McCallum this has zero to do with President Trump. Watch.
I think this is a perfect example of Democrats recognizing that all the accusations that they've made and the information that came out in the Michael Cohen case has nothing to do with the president. So now they're going to plan, I would say plan B, but this is more like plan D or E or F to take this president down.
So far, the inaugural committee has reportedly not been asked for records or contacted by prosecutors, but former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates, who has been cooperating with special counsel Robert Mueller, has been questioned about the inaugural committee spending. Shannon.
All right, Trace Gallagher, thank you very much. Okay, so two big stories to break down with our panel: the inauguration investigation and a federal judge's order that the Mueller team cough up key documents about Michael Flynn and how he was targeted by the FBI. So let's bring in former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman and Fox News contributor, former Utah Congressman Jason Chaffetz. Welcome to you both tonight.
Hi, Shannon.
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the questions now that we have about this Flynn investigation is that he was interviewed in January of 2017. The documents that led to the FBI getting involved and eventually his plea deal have what's called a 302, which is an assessment or a compilation of what he said at the interview. It wasn't written, at least the one that was tagged by the courts, until August of 2017. So that's raising questions about whether there were other 302s, whether this was modified or edited. And the Federalist, writing about this, the headline, "The federal judge overseeing Michael Flynn's sentencing just dropped a major bombshell," says this: the timing of the rewrite shortly after then FBI agent Strzok was removed from special counsel Robert Mueller's team after his anti-Trump text messages came to light raises the possibility that Mueller wanted to scrub the evidence of Strzok's taint. Remember, he was one of the two interviewing Michael Flynn. Having the second agent involved in questioning Flynn draft a new 302 summary would eliminate attacks premised on Strzok's bias against the president. Jason, sounds like the judge is really looking very specifically at this information he wants now.
I like this Judge Sullivan. He's got a good record of doing this. I'm glad he's probing into this. Look, you have very disheartening comments from former Director Comey, taking advantage of a situation of a White House which is days into its infancy, again, doing things outside the norm, not the way they would do it. You have very discredited people based on the Inspector General's report, the fact that Mr. McCabe was fired. You have this report that is coming out months and months. You're supposed to go do these interviews, basically fill out the paperwork in the next day or two so that they have a record in this file. That seems to be out of order. And then the two agents that are there and supposedly investigate him didn't find anything wrong, but now we find out the report comes months later. It does not add up, Shannon. It really does not.
Well, we're going to see, because, of course, this is a judge, as we've explained, who oversaw a trial years ago involving then Senator Stevens, and they ended up investigating the DOJ and FBI scathing report on how they had exculpatory evidence that was withheld. He wants to make sure that doesn't happen in any investigation, including this one. All right, Harry, the reference there to the Jim Comey comments that Jason made, I want to play some of those because he talks about how they essentially got away with something by sending these agents over very quickly to Michael Flynn without a lawyer told him it wasn't necessary. They wanted him relaxed. They didn't warn him about lying. Here's what Comey says about that situation.
And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
Harry, they did. One of them was Peter Strzok, and that wound up with this plea deal now with Michael Flynn having pled guilty to lying.
Yeah, and I do think it's got Judge Sullivan, who, to be fair, is a frequent critic and suspicious of the government. I think it has his antennas up, just as the congressman said. A few points we ought to make here, though. First, it would not be expected in this kind of interview of a department insider that you would give any kind of warnings at all. It's neither required nor customary. And second, the so-called sinister rewriting of the 302, that's also not unusual, to have notes initially and then to revise them down the line. So the suggestion that some of this is either untoward or irregular, I think, is off base. Nevertheless, it's clear that Sullivan is quite worried about some kind of entrapment situation. One final point to raise. He was only charged with the lying point. He could easily have been charged by Mueller with several other offenses, except he immediately began to cooperate, and that affected his whole relationship vis-a-vis
and by the
special
way,
counsel.
Federal judge can reject the plea deal and make the prosecutors take this to trial. That's quite a possibility. So we'll see when all this information comes in. But I want to ask you both quickly about this. The headline tonight that the inaugural committee is being investigated. It's responding, saying that they did everything fully in compliance with the laws. They filed with the FEC, with the IRS. They have nothing to hide. And they say they don't even know about an investigation. No one's contacted them. You first.
Well, there needs to be suspicion here. Just because it has the name Trump next to it doesn't mean that gives them carte blanche to just go investigate anything and everything they want. There needs to be some suspicion here and some reason to do that. Now, if that came from something that Mr. Cohen had, that'd be a whole different ballgame. But they should have accounting, and it's the job of the IRS and the Federal Election Commission to oversee that, not necessarily do another criminal probe that leads to nowhere.
Harry, a lot of criminal probes going on and more being promised out of New York as well. This is just the latest.
That's right. That's right. And look, I agree with the congressman. You need some predicate, but they have it here. It's not just Cohen. It's also Rick Gates, who's cooperated. And there is some worry, right? You have Franklin Haney, who gives $1 million and then later asks for favorable treatment for a $5 billion loan. They're just looking at it now, but I don't think it's the sort of thing. It's a lot of missing money, and it makes sense to try to figure out where'd all the money go.
Well, the committee says it's been audited and happy to provide that, so we'll follow the story. In the meantime, Harry and Jason, thank you both very much.
Thanks.
All right, a Fox News exclusive. In his first TV interview since his former fixer, Michael Cohen, was sentenced to 3 years in jail, President Trump slamming his former lawyer. Correspondent Kristen Fisher has highlights. Good evening, Kristen.
Hey, Shannon. Well, today President Trump said something that he doesn't normally say. He said he made a mistake when he hired his now former attorney, Michael Cohen. The president tried to make the case that Cohen and Cohen alone was responsible for any crime committed in relation to those hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and to Karen McDougal.
Let me tell you, I never directed him to do anything wrong. Whatever he did on his own. He's a lawyer. A lawyer who represents a client is supposed to do the right thing. That's why you pay them a lot of money.
Now, President Trump also tried to make the case that those hush money payments were not illegal, despite what prosecutors said or what Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to or what American Media Inc., the National Enquirer's parent company, has admitted to. AMI admitted to prosecutors to paying off Playboy model Karen McDougal in order to ensure that she did not publicize damaging allegations about the candidate before the 2016 election. But when President Trump was asked by Fox's Harris Faulkner about it, he said this.
I don't think, and I have to go check, I don't think they even paid any money to that tabloid, okay? I don't think we made a payment to that tabloid. I was asking the question, I don't think we made a payment.
Now, in the interview, President Trump was also asked about the news that General Motors would be laying off 15% of its workforce and closing 4 plants in the U.S., including one in the all-important state of Ohio.
Ohio's going to replace those jobs like in 2 minutes, but I don't like that General Motors does that, and they're going down to Mexico to make cars. To tell me a couple of weeks before Christmas that she's going to close in Ohio and Michigan, not acceptable to me. And she's either going to open fast or somebody else is going to go in, but General Motors is not going to be treated well.
So a stern warning for General Motors and some harsh words for its CEO. Shannon, he called her actions nasty. Shannon.
All right, Kristen Fisher, thank you very much. New tonight, the Senate offering 2 harsh rebukes against the leadership of Saudi Arabia. Senators voting to condemn Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, backing a resolution saying he is responsible in the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Lawmakers also voting tonight to end U.S. military assistance to the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen's civil war. It's unclear if the House will consider either measure. The latest on the border wall battle.
Schumer to say, well, based on that logic, he doesn't need Congress to pay for the wall anymore. While Pelosi told reporters the president doesn't seem to understand how trade agreements work. After this tweet where the president claimed, quote, I often stated one way or the other Mexico is going to pay for the wall. This has never changed. Our new deal with Mexico and Canada, the USMCA, is so much better than the old one, very costly and anti-USA and NAFTA deal, that just by the money we save, Mexico is paying for the wall. Well, Pelosi said the president made the same case in their White House smackdown, and it showed her the Oval Office is what she called an evidence-free zone. While the president tonight is trying to shame Democrats, ranging from Schumer to former President Bill Clinton, who wanted a wall, but now simply do not want to give him a victory. Watch.
The president said Mexico's going to pay for this. And we said, well, how are they going to pay for it? What money? What money? What money? That money will be used to pay for the wall. The money that businesses make. What money is he talking about that's going to go pay for the wall? It just isn't. It just doesn't measure up.
The fact is, they've always supported fences and walls and partitions. But you know what? They only don't want to do it because of me. Whatever it takes to get border security, I will do it. I pledged that a long time ago, and I will pledge it always.
Well, lawmakers in the House and Senate need to pass several spending bills to keep the government open past next Friday. But the House has now basically left town. They don't plan to meet again until Wednesday, the 19th, late in the evening, meaning when they come back, they have about 2 days to get a deal. Going again right down to the wire, Shannon.
Yeah, they seem to like getting to the cliff. That's usually when we get these things done. So maybe I'll have
They're hanging there. They've got a foot dangling.
Right, Christmas dinner with you here in the studio. We'll see where this goes to. All right, Ed, thank you.
All right, good.
Well, the Washington Post says it is possible for Democrats to make a deal with the president. The editorial board saying there's a compromise within reach on the wall and immigration if each side has the spinal fortitude to face down its own most rabid partisans and take it. Time now for tonight's Power Panel. Fox News contributor Jamu Green, Fox News senior Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergram, and chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp. Welcome to all of you. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here.
Good evening.
Okay, so let's start with this tweet from the president saying basically Mexico is going to pay for this thing. It's all going to work out because of the new trade agreement, which, by the way, Congress has not ratified just yet. There's the tweet there. He says at the end, Mexico is paying for the wall, all caps. Now, with that in mind, the top Democrat in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, had this to say today.
Well, Mr. President, if you say Mexico is going to pay for the wall through NAFTA, which it certainly won't, then I guess we don't have to. Let's fund the government.
All right, Chad. So how does all this work? And as Ed pointed out, they're only going to have about a 2-day window to figure this out.
Some of this is by design. This is a tactic. We've seen this especially at Christmas time before. You've heard of the Stockholm Syndrome.
Yep.
That's where, they keep everybody here in this limited window of time that they have, just 2.5 days before the deadline next Friday night and say, okay, you're either going to pass it or that's it. And what happens with the Stockholm Syndrome is all of a sudden you keep people here over the holidays and they start to sympathize with their captors. I'm not sure if that's going to work quite this time because the sides are so entrenched. What strikes me right now, Shannon, is there's virtually no negotiation going. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said that at her press conference today, had no direct conversations with the president since the Oval Office meeting on Tuesday. And we're going to be kind of in a cryogenic freeze probably until next Wednesday, next Thursday, when they get down to brass tacks.
Okay, and Jamu, to that point, GOP Senator John Kennedy said today, listen, Pelosi's got to she's got to prove her mettle and get those votes to become speaker. That's still not a done deal, though it looks very close to it. So why should she be willing to negotiate? Here's what he said.
I don't expect Mrs. Pelosi to make any concessions whatsoever. She wants to be the Speaker of the House, and the House is now going to be have a Democratic majority, and many of the new Democrats are pretty far to the left. And if she makes any concessions to Trump, then she's probably not going to be the Speaker.
Jimmy, we know in recent years, Democrats have controlled the White House, House, and Senate. Republicans have just got done doing it, too. No one seems to be able to have the appetite to actually get something done on this. Do you have any hopes this time will be different?
Well, I think we have to keep hope alive, as they say, because this issue is so important to the families that are being affected by this and to our economy and certainly to our national security. The reality here is, though, Shannon, that Democrats did go to the table to President Trump with the desire to negotiate. They put two strong bipartisan options on the table. And if you only have in your toolbox huffing and puffing and shaming, that is not what legislation is made of. That's also not what leadership is made of. And so we do need to see leaders on both sides of the aisle, certainly led by President Trump, embracing compromise as an essential part of the legislative toolbox. That has not happened yet. We also need to see some truth from the president. We now have a lot of Republicans following in his footsteps, talking about 10 terrorists trying to cross the border. This issue should not be led with lies. It should be led with American values and with our laws.
Much of this information is coming from the DHS. I mean, he's directly citing the Department of Homeland Security for a lot of these stats and things that he's using. And Matt, to bring you in here.
It's a lot more than 10 criminals.
Well, she was saying terrorists, so I mean that's a distinction.
Well, I suppose, but here's the bottom line,
it's
which
a huge
is
distinction.
we should make sure that people that come into this country go through the process that every legal person who has residency in this country has to go through, and part of that is making sure that you have a background check done. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm pro-immigration, but if we somehow upset that process, we're putting people at risk, and that's a big mistake. So Democrats have to really look inward. First of all, Nancy Pelosi has really nothing to do with any of this. Remember, she's not even the speaker yet. The new Democratic majority isn't in place until January. This is about Senator Schumer, and it's about Democrats in the Senate giving the president enough votes to simply secure the border. This is something that should be nonpartisan, and this is something we really should get done.
Okay, Chad, CNBC.com had a piece today talking about where we are in these negotiations, and they said Trump's tweet Thursday, meaning this one about Mexico's going to pay for everything, further muddles his message on the need for congressional funding for his wall. It could give him less leverage as he pushes Democrats to yield and approve money for the barrier.
Here's the problem, that as soon as the president said, I'll take the mantle for the wall, this lost traction in the House of Representatives, where they talked about this idea of maybe moving a $5 billion bill for the wall, sending that over to the Senate, and then blaming Chuck Schumer, saying, oh, this is the Schumer shutdown. Please cough up 9 Democratic votes to get from 51 Republicans to 60 total to break a filibuster. As soon as that happened, it's unclear that they can blame that on Chuck Schumer. And the other problem is it still remains to be seen if they can move this through the House of Representatives. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a last-ditch chance, a last-ditch try next week. Part of the problem they're having in the House of Representatives right now is an attendance problem. They've been averaging only 392 members voting since the midterm election.
Last I checked, they're 435 from civics
There's
class.
433. There's still 2
vacancies. Right, because we have some vacancies
That's
too.
That's right.
But you're missing more than 100 people.
They were down at 376 at one point since the midterms. And so you don't know the matrix of who's here to vote. And that might be one of the reasons why Republicans are reluctant to move that bill. But again, if they're going to get something done, you could see a scenario where something starts in the House, they move it over to the Senate, they strip it out, and they send it back to the House, and that's where that Stockholm syndrome kicks in. You take it or you leave it. At the end of the day, it's unclear if they're even going to get that far because there's no bill. There's agreement right now, Shannon, on everything in the remaining 7 appropriations bills except for the wall.
All right, Jamuso, do you think that even in part, some of that wall money gets in there? I mean, the Democrats have talked about $1.6 billion. That's a lot less than the $5 billion the president wants.
Certainly, I think border security is essential to our national security, and shifting the conversation just solely from build a wall to the broader issue of border security and how we do that smartly is important, and funding that smartly is important. That is something that Democrats should embrace. What Republicans need to embrace is that protecting and expanding opportunities for immigrants is also essential to our national security. It's essential to our economy.
Has nothing to do with
it's
immigrants.
Essential to the rest of Americans.
All right, Matt.
It has nothing to do with immigrants. We have a whole system by which 1.2 million people get to come to this country and come legally. We're the most generous country on the face of the globe. I'm all for that. This has absolutely nothing to do with immigration. This has to do with people that are trying to undermine that system. And look, Obama and Clinton and many other Democrats voted for a fence, and the president talked about this. A fence, a wall, you find the synonym. We should be able to control our border so that people know the process they have to go in. And people are fleeing terrible situations and they want to be a refugee or an asylee. I'm all for it. You just have to follow the rules, and the rules are very clear.
This has everything to do with immigration,
because
that's how you get compromised legislation.
Nothing to do with it.
What does the president want? What do Democrats want? Democrats want a fix to DACA.
Yeah.
Democrats want an immigration fix, and that is how you get to compromise.
This is additional
That's
illegal
something the president should understand.
There was a deal that included there was a deal, or at least a proposal that included a lot of those, and nobody would come to the table and say yes to all of it. So hopefully they'll keep working, and the government will be funded. Jamu, Chad, and Matt, thank you very much. Maybe I'll see you here for Christmas as well.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Thanks, Shannon.
This is a Fox News alert from the traffic stop and fired at the officer, wounding him in the head. Then a responding canine unit tracked the suspect to where he was hiding behind a nearby business. They exchanged fire, wounded the suspect, who also later died. We're told a canine that was shot is in critical condition. Well, the far left already looking ahead to 2020, and it's not just President Trump and the Republicans. They're looking at Democrats they say they will target for primary challenges because they are not progressive and far left enough. Plus, we've got brand new Fox News polls on the McCarthy. McConnell does better among Republican registered voters. He's up 9 points since August. That might have something to do with Justice Kavanaugh. Pelosi gets stronger marks from Democrats and their registered voters. She's up 11 points since August. But what about Democrat unity? Roll Call running a piece tonight warning that Democrats who are not progressive enough are likely to face primary challenges from within the party in 2020. They include Congressman Seth Moulton from Massachusetts, Daniel Lipinski from Illinois, and Kurt Schrader from Oregon, all for different reasons. Let's bring in Fox News politics editor, author of Every Man a King, Chris Darwalt, for some expert analysis. Great to see you.
That book looks like it'd be really good as a Christmas gift. Boy, I don't know. I hadn't even thought about that.
You know that I got one.
I hadn't even thought about that.
I got one for my grandmother. Margaret, you signed it for her. Right now she's watching. You are her favorite. She tells me all the time. Yeah, you are Margaret's favorite. And she loves your book.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, so let's talk about these Democrat primaries because this is what we're told. Co-founder of Data for Progress says to keep the party moving left and advance progressive policies, we need a solid backbone of at least 36 left progressives in the House to hold the line. That means in 2020, running primary challenges in safe Democratic seats with a slate of young, diverse, progressive candidates. I think he's very much got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the mind.
Well, what he has in mind is a Freedom Caucus for the left. So the Democrats are very intentional in learning their lessons from, because what has happened with Democrats now is almost identical to what happened with Republicans 8 years ago. A party unified by the detest of the president in power, in which it's just enough to be against, sweeps you to a smashing midterm victory in the House. Yay! Okay, now what do you do? And the Tea Party was fairly successful in solidifying its gains within the Republican Party, and the power of the Freedom Caucus as a veto bloc inside the House speaks to that. However, Democrats don't want to let, or liberal Democrats don't want to let this moment pass. So they're targeting these guys who are in seats that Republicans could almost possibly not, it would be almost impossible for them to win.
So they might as well go for it, is what they're thinking.
So they're going for it. And the sin of these guys is twofold. One is they're too moderate. I think Lipinski's even sort of
one of them's pro-life, yeah.
Pro-life. And you're not supposed to be a pro-life Democrat. Moulton's big sin is that he has been against Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, publicly.
And as those poll numbers show, Nancy Pelosi's numbers are up substantially with Democrats. She has solidified her base. The president has helped her solidify her base in things like that meeting that they had and things like that, casting her as the #1 villain. And look, there's going to be Pelosi's cut a deal with these folks to secure her speakership. It's a done deal now. She's made it happen. Now there will be some reprisals for individuals who weren't on Team Nancy.
Which happened last time, too. I mean, last time they had this big debate. Okay, so let's talk about the polling, which is bad for all the top congressional leaders, Democrats and Republicans. There are net negatives. We're going to put those up for all of them. Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate, which he will remain so. He's upside down 16 points. Pelosi and Schumer, both -12. Kevin McCarthy, -4, and we're guessing that's only because the world does not know yet that he is going to be the top Republican in the House, because then there'll be equal opportunity haters against him as well.
Well, look, the thing for all these folks, and if you look at them, the reason that Pelosi's numbers are so extreme is that she is a famous national politician. She will be the only person to regain she'll be the first person to regain the speakership since Sam Rayburn in the 1950s.
We got a building named after him.
Right, exactly. She has been around. She is an institution unto herself. McConnell is famous now. He is a known commodity because he's been the Republican leader for a long time. These other players, people don't care, people don't know. The only thing, it doesn't matter how popular they are. Most of the people don't really care about or know about this. It matters how much strong partisans feel, how much they know you, and how strongly they feel about you. And in both the case of McConnell and Pelosi, they are both well known and pretty well liked among the people who matter for them.
All right, well, we know Congress is holding steady at about 12% approval rating, so they're doing better individually.
Well, but you know how that works.
People like their members.
I hate Congress. But I met my guy at a barbecue. He was really nice.
It was a pig picking, and it was delicious, and he was very friendly.
I'm in.
Suey. All right, thanks. All right, after much debate, don't laugh. The House and Senate finally passing a bill to overhaul the process for handling sexual assault and harassment claims within Congress. We all heard about the secret fund. So now the bill holds that lawmakers, including those who leave office, they're financially liable for settlements resulting from harassment and retaliation. It also eliminates the mandatory counseling and mediation for victims and gets rid of that cooling off period they're now required to observe before they can file a lawsuit or request an administrative hearing. The legislation now heads to President Trump, who is expected to sign it. It's the holiday season, which means the debate over religious displays in public places is on. But what's the actual legal standard, and why are so many cities and towns confused about that? Pastor Robert Jeffress is here to weigh in on how the Supreme Court could clear things up. Stick around.